It was August 1756. The fields of Saxony shimmered in the late summer sun, and beyond the border, the armies of Europe stirred. Diplomats had failed, alliances were shifting, and a new storm was forming. But one man had already made his move. Two of Prussia, just 44 years old, lean, sharp-eyed, and restless, ordered his troops across the frontier. It was a preemptive strike, a gamble, a declaration without words. With it, he launched the 7 Years' War, a global conflict that would reshape the balance of power in Europe. Frederick had no natural resources, no deep manpower reserves, and no coastline. Yet he believed in one thing, above all, that greatness could be forged by will, speed, and precision. This was the paradox of Frederick the Great, a ruler who read Voltaire by candlelight and waged war by cannon fire. A philosopher in a spiked helmet, a lover of music who built a war machine, and through strategy, discipline, and relentless ambition, he transformed Prussia from a minor German duchy into a European power. Frederick was born on January 24, 1712. In Berlin, into the House of Hohenzollern, his father, Frederick William I, known as the Soldier King, ruled with Spartan austerity. He drank little, drilled his troops obsessively, and scorned all things soft from birth. Frederick was shaped by contradiction. He loved music and poetry, spoke fluent French, and corresponded with philosophers. But his father despised such things. He wanted a soldier, not a scholar. Age 18. Frederick tried to flee Prussia with a friend, Hans Hermann von Katt. They were caught. Frederick was imprisoned. Katt was executed, forced to die before the prince's eyes. It changed him forever. Outwardly, Frederick conformed. He learned statecraft, military command, and discipline. But inwardly, he became colder, more calculating, and far more dangerous. When his father died in 1740, Frederick became king in Prussia. He inherited a small but well-drilled army of around 80,000 men. Prussia was rich in discipline, but poor in resources. Surrounded by larger states, Austria, France, Russia, its survival depended on speed, unity, and boldness. That same year, the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles VI, died. His daughter, Maria Theresa, inherited the Habsburg lands, including the wealthy province of Silesia. Frederick saw opportunity, claiming ancient rights and strategic necessity. He invaded Silesia, launching the War of the Austrian Succession. It was a cold, calculated move. And it worked. Despite being outnumbered, Frederick's troops performed with precision and aggression. He defeated Austrian forces at Mollwitz and Chotisitz. By 1745, Silesia was his dot. It became the cornerstone of his kingdom, and marked the beginning of his legend. Frederick was not like other monarchs of his time. He surrounded himself with thinkers, not courtiers. He wrote books on military theory, philosophy, and history. He composed music, played the flute, and built Sanssouci, a retreat in Potsdam where he entertained artists and read Voltaire's letters. He abolished judicial torture, promoted religious tolerance, and called himself the first servant of the state. He despised serfdom, though he didn't abolish it. He reformed education and civil law. In an age of absolutism, he practiced something closer to enlightened despotism. Yet his state was anything but pacifist. Beneath the poetry and gardens, Prussia became a fortress. In 1756, Frederick once again moved first, fearing encirclement by Austria, Russia, and France now allied against him. He struck preemptively at Saxony, drawing Europe into what became the 7 Years' War. It was the most dangerous moment of his reign. Prussia stood alone against 3 great empires. Its manpower dwindled. Its capital Berlin was briefly occupied. His sister Wilhelmine wrote of his black despair. At times, Frederick considered suicide, but he never surrendered. His victories at Rosbach and Leuthen were masterpieces of maneuver and timing. He outflanked larger forces, used terrain to his advantage, and drilled his soldiers to fire faster than any other army in Europe. He earned the title, the Great. And then, in 1762, came the miracle. Tsar Elizabeth of Russia died. Her successor, Peter III, idolized Frederick and withdrew from the war. With Russia gone, Austria and France could no longer press the advantage. The war ended in 1763. Prussia survived, and Silesia remained his dot. Frederick had beaten the odds. What made Frederick's military machine so effective was not just his brilliance, but his obsession with detail. He personally reviewed military manuals, mapped terrain, and studied enemy weaknesses. His troops drilled constantly. Cavalry charges were timed to the second. Infantry formations moved like clockwork. He punished incompetence without mercy, but he rewarded bravery and talent, often promoting officers from humble backgrounds, a rarity in aristocratic Europe. Frederick created a model of the modern military state, centralized, professional, and ruthlessly efficient, and it terrified his neighbors. After the war, Frederick never fought another major conflict. Instead, he governed with quiet intensity. He rebuilt the economy, invited immigrants to repopulate war-torn regions, and sponsored agricultural reforms. He drained swamps, introduced new crops, like potatoes, and built canals. Yet Prussia remained a rigid society. The Junker aristocracy held power. Serfs remained bound to the land. Frederick's reforms were enlightened, but limited. He also expanded his territory once more, but this time without war. In 1772, he took part in the first partition of Poland, acquiring West Prussia through diplomatic coercion and collusion with Austria and Russia. It was a cynical move, but it added vital land and connected Prussia to the Baltic. In his later years, Frederick grew more isolated. He continued to rule from his study at Sanssouci, surrounded by dogs, soldiers, and silence. He wore the same uniform each day, worked from 4 a.m. until nightfall, and avoided ceremony. He outlived his allies and enemies. Voltaire died in 1778. His sister Wilhelmine passed before that. Even his dogs, his only companions in old age, were buried beside him in his garden. On August 17, 1786, Frederick died at age 74. He had ruled for 46 years. He was buried not in a cathedral, but under a simple stone at Sanssouci, as he had wished, with only the names of his dogs near him. Frederick the Great left behind a paradox. He was a philosopher who waged war, a monarch who embraced reason but ruled with iron, a king who spoke of humanity but sent thousands to die on frozen fields. He made Prussia a power respected, feared, and militarized. His military reforms shaped armies for generations. His governance inspired both Enlightenment thinkers and autocrats. German nationalists in the 19th century. He became a hero. To others, a warning. He called himself the first servant of the state. And perhaps that was true not because he ruled for the people, but because he believed the state was everything. Art, war, law, power, all in service to the machine he built. Prussia would not last forever, but the idea of the disciplined, centralized, rational state born in Frederick's court lives on. The flute-playing warrior, the strategist king, a man of contradiction, and one of history's most brilliant and dangerous minds.